Joining us this morning in studio is the mayor of Berkeley, Jesse Arreguin. Mayor, thanks for coming in. Appreciate it.
Thank
you
you.
were telling us during Alex's report that night you were at City Hall.
Yes.
You were in communication with the chief of police as well. Do you think you, as the mayor of the city, could have done more to limit the destruction that night?
Well, the decision about how to deploy our police is a decision of the chief of police. I do think our police did an incredible job under very difficult circumstances to minimize harm to people in the crowd.
Why do you say incredible job? There was $100,000 in damage. Fires were being lit. Doors were being smashed. ATMs were being broken. I don't see why that was an incredible.
The destruction of property is completely unacceptable, and but I am happy that more people weren't hurt, and things could have escalated to a level, as we've seen in Berkeley and in Oakland, where more people could have been hurt, more property could have been damaged, and it's a tough decision that our police have to make. But I think they made the right decision to really minimize things really escalating and becoming even more dangerous for people in the streets.
Mr. Mayor, what can be done about people who come into cities and are wearing masks? This has happened in Oakland.
Yeah.
This happens here in Berkeley. That's where things change. In the past, you could, have people taking pictures of people doing destruction and find them and charge them. These people are wearing masks. I mean, has any thought been given as to, okay, here they come, because you can tell that there they are, to isolate them or do something about them? Those are the people who seem to be wrecking stuff.
It's hard to know. I mean, these people literally, take advantage of large protests to come in, insert themselves into large crowds, to commit acts of destruction and violence, and there is security footage, to my understanding. Some of the businesses that were impacted, our police will be looking at that footage to try to
but look at this footage right now. I mean, at what point, if I'm sitting there watching this, I'm like, why are they not being arrested? That
was on the UC Berkeley campus. A lot of what happened was actually on the UC Berkeley campus.
To begin with, and then they moved to city streets.
And where there was actually smashing of windows was actually in the city's jurisdiction. Right. But a lot of the activity was actually contained on the UC Berkeley campus. And I want to remind people that we did not, as a city, make the decision about inviting the speaker. We did not make the decision to cancel the speaker, and this was a decision of the university, and we had to respond when the speaker was scheduled.
You were against Milo coming to the City of Berkeley.
I think, once the university made the decision, they want to respect his free speech rights, but we've seen what's happened in other communities where he's provoked a violent response, and I was very concerned about that.
Can you at least understand why there are Cal students and others online saying, why didn't police move in sooner? You're saying they're there to protect life, or life first, property second.
Yes.
Do you at least understand the sentiment of?
Absolutely.
Why aren't they going in there?
Absolutely, and they were there. I can assure you, they were there. And
are they being told to hang? I mean, gosh, so much has been made about civil liberties and police brutality. Do you feel like the police are hanging back a little bit more than perhaps they might be in the past?
Well, I think they are. The way that we respond to large protests has changed over the years, and I think the concern is not putting a large number of people's lives at risk. And so it's a very difficult call. How do you identify and arrest the people that are causing the damage and the violence, while at the same time not risking the lives of what was largely a nonviolent crowd?
Well, people were assaulted, though. About a half dozen.
5 people were assaulted.
And this is what people find frustrating. There were not that many arrests at all. I mean, I understand you can't arrest all of them.
But I think there's one arrest from what we're
Something
hearing.
like that, yeah. And I mean, we could all see that people were committing, vandalism and violence. I mean, couldn't the police department just grab a few of those people, or is that too dangerous?
Well, my understanding is that when there were assaults happening, the police did go in and did bring people out and did respond to those situations. There still is a lot of discussion happening after the incident to find out what exactly happened, and we'll be getting those findings. But what happened on Wednesday, the destruction of property, is completely unacceptable. That does not reflect Berkeley. Berkeley is not a violent, community. We're a community where people of all perspectives, of all beliefs, have a right to speak, have a right to protest, and just a few mass provocateurs coming into our community to cause violence and destruction does not reflect our community.
So do you
and the values of
feel
our
Milo
community.
should have spoken on Wednesday night? He should have had the right to speak, based on our Constitution.
He has a right to speak. He does.
What about you personally? Do you agree that he should have? Do you feel that he should have spoken on Wednesday night? Were you disappointed, I guess you could say?
I was very alarmed and upset with the riots. I was very concerned when the university announced that he was going to be speaking. I think it was in Seattle. There was a person who was shot at a rally because he had come to speak. I knew that this was good. I think a lot of us were concerned that this may incite a large crowd, and once we heard...
I was reading an article. Is it true you called him a white nationalist?
Yes.
Milo? But then you later apologized. Why the apology?
Clearly because I do think he is a white nationalist. In fact, he actually is...
So then why apologize?
Well, because, you know, I think we probably shouldn't be using labels, but, you know, he actually, I think, announced that he's going to be funding a scholarship for white men, and has said a lot of hateful things about women, about minorities, about Muslims. I think his speech, frankly, is hate speech, personally. But he does have a constitutional right to be heard. It's not the views that I believe in. It's not the views that the people of Berkeley believe in.
But as the leader of the city, would you open the doors to him again?
No,
if
I would not.
You would not.
I would not. Clearly, because the response was violent and was aggressive, and we need to balance going forward. I think we need to balance the right of free speech with the need to preserve public safety, and I think that's a discussion we're going to have with the university going forward.
Okay.